Good afternoon, Chair Hageman, Ranking Member Ledger-Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Jay Spaan. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and serve as the Executive Director for the Self-Governance, Communication, and Education Tribal Consortium. It is a great honor to be here today to discuss self-determination and self-governance. I'm going to start with a few general remarks about these authorities and then focus on opportunities for Indian Affairs to make the implementation of the authorities more efficient. Self-determination contracting and self-governance compacting are effective mechanisms that tribal governments use for delivering federal programs to their communities. Nearly all tribal nations administer BIA or IHS programs using self-determination contracts, and more than 380 tribal nations have BIA or IHS programs delivered through self-governance compacts. Both self-determination and self-governance are authorized in the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, but they are distinct authorities and mechanisms, each with its own attributes, benefits, and regulatory framework. Self-governance was developed as a tribally driven initiative to improve upon and move beyond the limitations that tribes experienced using self-determination. As such, self-governance authority provides tribes with greater flexibility and more efficiencies. For instance, under self-governance, tribes have the authority to redesign federal programs in ways that better address local needs without federal interference. Self-determination authority differs in that it requires tribes to submit redesign proposals for federal review and approval. Another difference between self-determination and self-governance is that they are managed by different entities within Indian Affairs. BIA administers self-determination contracts, while the Office of Self-Governance oversees and manages self-governance agreements. Both BIA and the Office of Self-Governance are overseen by the Office of Assistant Secretary, Indian Affairs. 50 years of experience has shown that self-determination and self-governance are successful. Tribal nations have demonstrated that local control, local delivery, and knowledge of need ultimately result in the delivery of more effective programs, greater administrative and governance capacity, increased accountability, and more extensive economic benefits. While the success of self-governance is undeniable, there are opportunities for our federal partners to make implementation of the mechanisms within Indian Affairs more effective and efficient. For example, some tribal nations with self-governance agreements do not receive all the funding and supporting documentation owed to them within timeframes identified in their agreements. One tribe told us they're still waiting for $13 million from fiscal year 22 and 23 owed for administration of programs assumed under a self-governance compact. The concern of timely disbursement of funds was also raised by the GAO in 2019. GAO specifically noted that Interior's inability to disperse funds within timeframes agreed to in self-determination and self-governance agreements can cause an undue burden on some tribes and dissuade other tribes from using the mechanisms. The GAO report indicated that a complex distribution process and significant vacancies in key positions are both factors that contribute to the delays. In addition, tribal nations have raised concerns that self-governance has not been effectively integrated throughout BIA's structure and organization, and that key offices do not coordinate as needed to effectively fulfill their responsibilities. As previously mentioned, the Office of Self-Governance and BIA are separate entities under Indian Affairs. In part, this organizational arrangement was intended to ensure that BIA's initial reluctance to embrace self-governance would not hinder the opportunity for tribal nations to use it. However, for tribal nations with self-governance agreements, separation without effective collaboration may have limited access to some BIA offices, programs, and resources. Further, due to ineffective collaboration and a lack of sharing basic information within the organization, some tribes have experienced situations in which they were delayed receiving programmatic funding increases. Finally, we continue to hear examples of tribes that receive conflicting information depending on the office within Indian Affairs that they are speaking with. For instance, we recently heard that a tribal government was denied a request to compact a BIA program by the Office of Self-Governance on the basis that BIA had no funds to support the program. When the tribe went with BIA directly, the Bureau found funding to support the tribe's request. It's unclear why tribes continue to receive inconsistent information from the Bureau depending on which office is asked, but it seems reasonable that a lack of collaboration and information sharing contributes to this problem. I respectfully offer the following suggestions for the subcommittee. Indian Affairs should implement comprehensive modernization efforts for technology systems, improve data management and data sharing capabilities, and streamline unnecessarily complex processes. 2, Indian Affairs should ensure that self-governance is integrated and understood throughout the department, including BIA, so that tribes with self-governance agreements are not isolated to only one office. Thank you for the opportunity to share information with you. Chair Hageman, Vice Chair Ledger-Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee, this completes my prepared statement. I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.